Kilarigbo Live TV.
I have a two-part engagement. One on behalf of Professor Oleshwika, and some remarks of recall, memory lane remarks about why today is important in Nigeria. Professor Oleshwika clearly wants us to remember that central to democracy is respect for the will of the people. On the 12th of June, the Nigerian people spoke loud and clear in 1993. But a group of people thought that their will was greater than the will of the people. And because of that mindset, our country was locked in a long battle, but it was a battle of liberation. The commitment of the man who freely got the mandate of the people because the people wanted change kept the fuel in the many people who occupied Nigeria, even before the war occupied was made available for struggles of this nation. That struggle brought out citizenship in the Nigerian people. All Nigerians became involved. We were privileged to have movements like the concerned professionals. The concerned professionals were people who ordinarily did not think about politics. They were business executives, they were professionals. But when the will of the people was rubbished, citizenship arose in them, and they decided to join even on the streets. There were people who paid a very dear price. But what was not lost was that the will of the people was sovereign, was supreme. And that struggle eventually led to the end of military rule in 1998-99. But the big question that continues to haunt us is that the people have begun to feel wary about this their democracy, or them all crazy, as Fela called it. And yet, those who have acquired power are not sensitive enough to realize that the people have left them. There is a program, initiative, tying several African countries together. This project, started by some American university dons, called the Afro Barometer, which measures the support of democracy in societies. And they worked very hard in Africa. Since 1998, they have been measuring continually how people everywhere in Africa feel about their democracy. In 1998, when they started, the feeling about democracy in Nigeria was like the button was going, everybody was excited about this coming democracy, this 1999 election. Latest measure suggests that Nigeria would not care anymore about that democracy. The democracy has made itself unattractive to the people. And the hard measures in the Afro Barometer series are there. And so we have a collective duty to rebuild democracy. Almost in the way that Chief MKO Abiola's candidacy made us forget all those funny things we like to pretend that we care about. Ethnicity, religion, this, that. Everybody rallied around one candidate, no matter what language they spoke, no matter what religion they professed, and all of that. Our democracy needs to return to the excitement of 1993. And our hope, therefore, is that today provides the opportunity to begin to rally the people. And so on behalf of Professor Olushoyinka, I'd like to challenge us to remember that we all have a duty as citizens to make this democracy work for the Nigerian people. Right now, it is not working for them because, I might just give you a few statistics. Michael Sego may try to give a number of them, but just one or two flavors that I think we somehow need to begin to get sensitive to. Next year, everything we earn as a country will not be enough to service our debt. The entire income Nigeria will have next year will not be able to service our debt. The thing that will facilitate new revenues, that will make it possible, the environment, the condition, is not improving, it's getting worse. So that investors are staying away. 28 May, 2 years ago, the Forbes magazine published an article, Nigeria, Africa's money losing machine. In effect, it was suggesting that if you invest in Nigeria, you are foolish. And what is the big risk of doing business in Nigeria? Regulatory risk, government. We live in a country, and Chibozegome gave that statistic in some measure about poverty. We have now been dubbed the poverty capital of the world. That means that we have the biggest concentration of absolutely poor people on the planet Earth. And the absolute poor in Nigeria actually exceeds the total number of absolute poor in the most populous countries in the world, India and China. Nigeria has more poor people. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation study actually suggests that in the next 10 years, 40% of the most miserable people on the planet Earth will come from Nigeria and Congo DRC. And these are two extremely endowed countries in terms of natural resources. The only problem is incompetent and greedy leadership. That's the reason we are where we are. And democracy was to provide an opportunity to be able to replace such people. But that has not happened because we don't have a democracy in Nigeria. Almost all our elections in the last 20 years have been fraudulent. Almost all, quote me. How can we move forward if we don't have a real democracy where your vote counts? But Nigerian people can seize the process and make their votes count. Now, we can. That's what took us to the streets. The same people, very sadly, who killed Madam Abiola were supposed to kill me. Yes. I mean, the court records are there. They tried twice and failed. But God's will always. Yes. And so whatever it takes for us to return this country to democracy from this pseudo-democracy of now must be done. That is why every person in Nigeria must register. And like happened in Kano, when Shekarao challenged Kwankwaso years ago, the youth manned the process. Thank God we now have electronic transmission, at least to contribute to the process, so that we can have a real democracy. Now, people don't vote, not because they don't want to vote, but because of 2-3 things. One, the politicians use violence to make it election day, a day when these people are afraid to come out. 2, they so doctor the process that people don't think anything will come out of it. But let the people know that they can make something come out of it and rally and defend their votes. Let me take a personal part away from this. You know, Abiola Chozogome had quoted when he went to see Chief Aneni after the election. I was talking about why he left the country. I had the privilege of that same conversation with Chief Abiola. I had traveled out of the country to go to a meeting in Belgrade, which was having a civil war. At the time, I had to fly into Budapest and a 10-hour car drive into Belgrade. And when I came out, I caught a flight to Frankfurt. It was in Frankfurt I heard Chief Abiola had left Nigeria. I called his home in London. He was not home. I left a message that I called. At about 2 a.m., my hotel phone in Frankfurt rang. It was Chief Abiola. And I said to him, Chief, I was rushing back to say we should start a thank you tour of Nigeria. We should just start a thank you tour and start going around Nigeria. Then he gave me a version of what he just said. I'll tell you the truth, I'll confess in public. During that phone call, I started crying. I just broke down and began to cry. And then we returned to Nigeria. The sacrifices that have been made are too much for us to lose this democracy. To allow it to continue to go the way it is going. We have to build a process. And that's the struggle that we have been engaged in for a few years now. I mean, people say thought force, all those, what they know is that I don't like that using thought force.
Kilarigbo Live TV, Ẹ̀rọ amóhùnmáwòrán tíá.